It was the coldest night Zephyria 9 had seen in decades. Rain slammed against the metal walls of the small outer colony station, and the wind whistled through the empty corridors like angry spirits. Jalen, a human engineer, shivered despite his thick jacket and gloves. The station's old heaters sputtered, sending only weak warmth into the far corners where shadows gathered. He rubbed his arms, wishing he had more than just scraps of food and a blanket. Alone nights like these made him feel small, fragile, and very human. He was almost finished repairing the damaged communication array when a strange sound stopped him in his tracks. It was a soft whimper, muffled under the roar of the storm. At first he thought it was an animal, maybe a stray creature from the nearby alien forests. But the sound repeated closer this time, desperate and trembling. His heart beat faster. He followed the noise to the far corner of the station where shadows clung to the walls. That's when he saw her. She was small, no taller than a human teenager, but unlike anything he had ever seen. Silver fur covered her body, shimmering faintly in the dim emergency lights. Her ears were tall and pointed, twitching nervously, and her eyes glowed a deep amber that seemed almost too bright for the dark room. Her hands were tipped with small sharp claws, and her teeth peeked through trembling lips. She looked fragile, scared, and lost. Jalen froze, unsure what to do. She growled softly, a sound that mixed fear and warning. He raised his hands slowly. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said, trying to keep his voice calm. "Do you need help?" The alien tilted her head, a strange, cautious movement. She seemed to study him, measuring his intentions. Her eyes never left his, glowing in the shadow. Then she lowered herself slightly, shivering. The metal floor was cold, and he realized her thin coat of fur was no match for the freezing wind outside. Without thinking, Jalen pulled the small blanket from his cot. It was worn, frayed at the edges, but warm. He stepped closer. "Here," he said softly. "Take this. You'll freeze if you stay like this." For a moment she hesitated, her ears flattening slightly in confusion. Then, with a small, almost inaudible sigh, she accepted the blanket. She wrapped it around her shoulders and curled into a tight ball on the floor. Her eyes stayed on him, and for a moment he thought he could see relief, and maybe even gratitude in them. He sat nearby, careful not to crowd her, and watched as she shivered under the thin warmth. "It's okay," he whispered. "You're safe here." Time seemed to slow. Outside the storm raged, but inside that small corner of the station, something fragile and unusual was forming. There was no need for words. Sharing warmth was more than kindness in her species, it was an unspoken bond. Jalen didn't know it yet, but this simple act of offering a blanket would change both of their lives forever. Hours passed. He stayed awake, watching her, making sure she was okay. She didn't speak, or at least not in words he could understand, but every twitch of her ears, every flick of her tail under the blanket spoke to him. She was alert, wary, but trusting him enough to stay. That trust felt heavier than any weapon, stronger than any command. It was sacred. Finally, exhaustion claimed him. He lay down a few feet away, leaving the blanket over her. Her small head turned to watch him as he drifted off. In that quiet, storm-battered station, two very different beings shared the same fragile warmth, unknowingly forming a connection that would shape everything to come. Jalen didn't know her name. She didn't know his. But in that night of rain, cold, and fear, they shared something stronger than language, a first spark of trust, of bond, and perhaps of destiny. The storm finally passed by morning, leaving the station wet and battered but quieter. Jalen awoke to the soft glow of sunlight filtering through the tall windows. He blinked and realized Lyra, the silver-furred alien, was still there, curled under the blanket he had given her. Her amber eyes followed his every move, alert and cautious, yet soft in a way that made his chest tighten. He rubbed his tired eyes. "You stayed the whole night," he said quietly. "You could have wandered off, or gotten hurt." Lyra tilted her head and made a soft, low whistle, almost like a sigh. Her body twitched, ears flicking nervously, but she didn't move away. Jalen understood a little of her language, the movements, the sounds, the way she looked at him, but it was nothing like human words. Still, they found ways to communicate. A nod, a gesture, a careful touch. It was slow, awkward, but real. Over the next few days, Jalen and Lyra grew closer. He found a small corner in the station where she could rest safely, surrounded by boxes and equipment, away from the cold drafts. He brought her food, protein packs he could spare, and talked to her in soft, steady tones, explaining things about humans, the colony, and even himself. She listened, tilting her head, flicking her ears, occasionally curling closer when he approached. One evening, while checking the outer security panels, Jalen noticed Lyra watching him from the doorway. Her tail flicked with nervous energy. He waved, and she hesitated before taking a careful step toward him. "You're brave," he said softly. "Or maybe curious." "Probably both," she chirped, a strange sound, half growl, half song. It made Jalen smile despite the tension. That sound, he realized, was her way of responding, of trusting him in her own language. It felt personal, intimate, like a secret shared between them. But the more he observed her, the more he noticed the small signs. Lyra never let go of the blanket he had given her. She pressed herself against him whenever possible. Her eyes followed him like a shadow, and when she wasn't near him, she seemed restless, uneasy. Jalen didn't understand it at first. Then he remembered reading about alien species in old colony archives. Some species had rituals, bonds, and social customs humans could barely comprehend. Sharing warmth, especially in dangerous or freezing conditions, was considered sacred among many of them. In Lyra's species, it was a bond that could last a lifetime, a sign of deep trust and something more. A promise. The thought made his chest tighten. She thinks, "We're bonded," he whispered to himself one night while she slept nearby. The words felt strange and heavy. A lifelong bond? With an alien? Could it really be real? Despite his fear, a strange warmth bloomed inside him. It was terrifying, yes, but also oddly comforting. She was not just an alien. She was a living being, intelligent and loyal, who had chosen to trust him in a way humans rarely did, and in choosing to protect her, to care for her, he realized something about himself. Humanity's strength was not only in technology or battle, but in compassion, courage, and the ability to form bonds across impossible barriers. Lyra seemed to sense his thoughts too. When he reached out, she leaned in, nuzzling his hand briefly before curling back into her blanket. It was a small gesture, but it carried weight. It said without words that she accepted him, that she trusted him, that in her own way she had already made him part of her life. Days turned into nights, and nights into quiet routines. Jalen learned to anticipate her movements, her moods, even her subtle growls of contentment. And each time he saw her watching him, he felt a mix of awe, fear, and a strange joy. Something extraordinary was unfolding. A bond no one had expected. A connection beyond words, stronger than instinct, and more human than he had ever imagined. By the end of the week, it was clear. Lyra was not just an alien guest. She had become part of his life. And Jalen, whether he was ready or not, was already part of hers. Jalen had always thought he understood the universe. Years of engineering on distant colonies had taught him the cold rules of physics, machinery, and survival. But nothing in all his experience had prepared him for Lyra. She was more than an alien. She was a force of nature wrapped in silver fur, with eyes that saw straight into his heart, and now he realized he was in uncharted territory. It started with small signs. Whenever he entered a room, Lyra's ears twitched and her tail wrapped tighter around her body. If he moved away, she would follow, silent and careful, staying just close enough to be noticed. Her gaze lingered on him longer than it should have. Even her soft whines and growls carried meaning he could feel, even if he didn't fully understand the words. One evening, Jalen sat near the station's outer observation window, staring at the storm-scarred landscape below. Lyra lay curled beside him, half under the blanket he had given her, half against his leg. The warmth of her body was comforting, and the steady beat of her heart felt like a rhythm he could trust in a world that was otherwise cold and unpredictable. And then it hit him. She thought they were bonded. His mind raced. Bonded for life. A mating bond sacred in her species. The thought sent a shiver through him, not from fear but from awe and confusion. He could feel the weight of it even as he tried to deny it. It was terrifying, impossible, and strangely beautiful. Jalen swallowed hard. She thinks we belong together, he whispered under his breath. The words felt heavy in the quiet room. Could he really live with this? Could he really accept a bond that humans didn't even have a word for, with a being so different, so extraordinary? Lyra's ears flicked at the sound of his voice. She lifted her head, her amber eyes meeting his, and for the first time, Jalen felt the full intensity of her gaze. It was not curiosity. It was recognition, acceptance, trust, and something deeper, something like need. He looked at her, heart pounding. "I don't know if I can do this," he admitted quietly. I don't even know what this means, for us. For me. Lyra tilted her head as if answering him, though she made no sound he could understand. Instead, she leaned closer, her warm body pressing gently against his. That simple gesture carried more weight than any words could. It was a promise, a demand, a declaration all at once. She had chosen him, and in her mind there was no turning back. For hours, Jalen wrestled with his thoughts. Part of him wanted to pull away, to maintain the safety of rules and reason. But another part, the part he had always admired in humans, was drawn to courage, to compassion, to connection. And he realized something vital. Being human wasn't about avoiding the impossible. It was about embracing it, protecting it, and standing firm even when the odds were against you. The next morning, he woke to find Lyra watching him sleep, ears flicking softly, tail coiled around her like a protective spiral. She had not moved an inch from his side. He reached out carefully, brushing a strand of fur from her face, and felt a jolt of warmth and certainty. She trusted him completely. She had already marked him as hers. That realization brought fear, but also determination. Humans might be fragile, she might be alien, and the universe might not understand their bond. But he had to. Because in that moment, Jalen understood that humanity's greatest strength wasn't weapons, intelligence, or technology. It was love, courage, loyalty, the ability to risk everything for someone else. Lyra stirred, nuzzling against his arm. The soft growl she made was not a threat. It was a greeting, a reassurance, a quiet declaration of connection. Jalen smiled, feeling both fear and pride. He didn't fully understand what the future held, but he knew one thing. He would not run. He would not abandon her. Whatever this bond meant, he would honor it for her and for the strange, extraordinary life they were beginning together. The storm outside had passed, but a new storm of emotions and possibilities had begun inside the small station, and for the first time Jalen welcomed it. The days following Jalen's realization were calm, almost peaceful. Lyra and he had settled into a quiet rhythm. He repaired machinery. She explored the corners of the station, and at night they shared warmth under the same blanket. But peace in the outer colonies never lasted. It came suddenly without warning. Alarms blared through the station as red lights flashed across the walls. Jalen's heart pounded. Raiders, he muttered, grabbing his toolkit like a weapon. Explosions shook the outer walls, and distant screams echoed through the metal corridors. He ran toward the control room to assess the damage. Lyra appeared at his side instantly, eyes blazing amber with feral intensity. She crouched low, claws scraping the floor, tail lashing. Her growls were sharp and commanding, not of fear but of readiness. She wanted to fight. She wanted to defend him. "No!" Jalen shouted, grabbing her before she could bolt toward the raiders. "This isn't your fight, not alone." She struggled in his arms, small but incredibly strong. Her claws grazed his arms as she tried to break free, ears pinned back in frustration. "Lyra, listen to me," he yelled over the sirens. But she would not relent. Her species didn't understand cowardice, and she could not ignore danger, especially not when he was at risk. The station shook violently as another blast hit the outer wall. Panels and wires fell around them, sparks flying. Jalen's instincts kicked in. He ducked, pulling Lyra down behind a console for cover. She whimpered softly, a sound of concern that pierced him. "You're not just an alien," he said quietly, brushing her silver fur to calm her. "You're mine, and I won't let anything happen to you, but you have to trust me." "Stay with me!" Her growl softened slightly, and she pressed closer, letting him guide her. Together they moved through the chaos, dodging debris, repairing broken circuits, and warning other colonists where they could. Jalen realized something vital as he watched her leap and scramble with him. Humans might be fragile compared to alien predators, but humanity had a strength that could not be measured by claws or fangs. It was courage, compassion, the determination to protect those you cared for, no matter the odds. By the time the raiders breached the inner perimeter, Jalen and Lyra had prepared the station's defenses. Turrets powered up, warning lights flashed, and the outer doors sealed with a metallic clang. Lyra crouched beside him, tense and ready, ears flicking at every sound. She glanced up at him briefly as if seeking permission or reassurance. Jalen nodded. The battle was brief but intense. Lyra darted between shadows, striking with precision, snarling whenever a raider got too close. Jalen fired his tools-turned weapons, repairing turrets on the fly, shouting warnings. Together they were a strange, unstoppable force. human ingenuity and alien instinct intertwined. After what felt like hours, the raiders retreated, leaving the station battered but standing. Fires smoldered, walls were dented, and alarms still echoed faintly. Jalen sank to the floor exhausted, and Lyra collapsed beside him. She nuzzled his arm, growling softly in a way that felt like a mix of relief and gratitude. Jalen smiled weakly, brushing his hand over her fur. "You were incredible," he whispered. "But don't ever scare me like that again." Lyra's ears twitched, tail curling tightly around him, as if acknowledging the bond that had been tested and proven in fire. He realized then that their connection was no longer just about warmth or trust. It was about survival, loyalty, and a promise neither could break. The storm outside had been dangerous, but it was nothing compared to the storm they had just survived together. And in the quiet aftermath, Jalen felt a surge of pride, not just in himself, but in what it meant to be human, the courage to protect, the heart to care, and the strength to stand unafraid, even when everything around you seemed lost. Lyra rested her head on his chest, amber eyes glowing faintly in the dim emergency lights, and Jalen knew without a doubt that whatever the future held, they would face it together. The station was quiet again, but the air felt different. The battle had changed something between Jalen and Lyra. The fear, the danger, the chaos, they had survived it together. And now, in the soft glow of emergency lights and the quiet hum of the machinery, a new feeling filled the space between them. Jalen sat on the floor, leaning against a metal wall, and watched Lyra curl up beside him. Her fur was still slightly singed from the heat of the fires, and her amber eyes glimmered with a mix of exhaustion and alertness. He reached out, brushing a loose strand of silver fur from her face, and felt a warmth spread through him that had nothing to do with the blanket. I don't know what this is," he admitted softly, his voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know if humans or anyone else would understand it, but I feel it. And I think you do too." Lyra tilted her head, ears twitching. She leaned closer, pressing herself gently against his chest, her eyes locked with his, bright and unafraid. That look, so intense, so full of trust and need, made Jalen's heart pound. He realized then that the bond he had feared, the one that had seemed impossible, was already here. She had chosen him. She had accepted him. She had marked him as hers, and he was hers in return, whether he fully understood it or not. He took a deep breath. "I don't care what anyone says. I don't care what rules exist or what's considered normal. You are mine, and I want to be yours." Lyra's ears flattened slightly, a sign of submission in her species. Then she nuzzled his neck, her soft growl vibrating against his skin. It was a sound that carried more meaning than words could. It was a promise, a declaration, a bond that could not be broken. Jalen felt a lump in his throat. For the first time, he understood the full weight of what it meant to be human, not just in strength, not just in survival, but in courage and heart. To care, to protect, to love someone else even when the world was against you, that was humanity's true power. And now he was experiencing it fully, for Lyra, and with her. Days turned into nights, and nights into quiet routines of small, meaningful gestures. Jalen would repair the station, and Lyra would watch him, tail curling around his leg, ears flicking at every sound. He would talk to her, telling her about Earth, about humans, about the life he had lived and the life he hoped to build. She would respond with soft growls, chirps, and movements that spoke louder than words. Every touch, every glance, every shared moment strengthened the bond that had begun with a single act of kindness, a blanket shared on a cold, stormy night. One evening, as the two of them rested near the observation window, Jalen whispered, "I don't know what the future holds, but I do know this: we're in this together. Whatever comes, I won't let you go, and I think you feel the same." Lyra's amber eyes glowed brighter in response. She shifted slightly, pressing herself closer, and let out a long, soft growl that seemed to echo through the quiet room. It was an affirmation, a promise, a recognition of a bond neither human nor alien could ignore. Jalen smiled, feeling the weight of fear lift from his chest. He had worried about the impossible, about rules, about expectations, but none of that mattered now. The bond was real, alive, and unbreakable, and it was theirs. For the first time in his life, Jalen allowed himself to feel completely: fear, joy, awe, and love all at once. Humanity had given him the courage to care, and the universe had rewarded him with something extraordinary: Lyra was not just an alien. She was a partner, a friend, a fierce protector, and now, undeniably, a part of him. As the stars outside twinkled against the dark sky, Jalen held Lyra close, whispering softly, "We're together, for life." And in that quiet, storm-battered corner of Zephyria 9, two beings from different worlds embraced a bond stronger than fear, stronger than distance, stronger than the galaxy itself. Peace never lasted long on Zephyria 9. A few weeks after Jalen and Lyra had shared their quiet, perfect moments, the Council arrived. They were humans and aliens tasked with maintaining order on the colony, and they had heard rumors of Lyra's bond with a human, an unprecedented situation. "This union is unnatural," the lead counselor said, his voice cold and firm. "Human and alien bonding is forbidden. You must separate." Jalen's heart pounded. He stared at them, gripping Lyra's silver-furred shoulders tightly. "No," he said, his voice low but unshakable. "You will not take her. She is mine, and I will not let anyone break this bond." Lyra growled softly, ears flattened, tail flicking. She pressed closer to Jalen, a living shield, her amber eyes blazing. Jalen felt the warmth of her body, the undeniable connection that had grown over weeks of trust, survival, and shared danger. He could feel it in every muscle, every heartbeat. They were more than companions now. They were bonded for life, whether the Council liked it or not. The Council didn't back down. They had rules, laws, centuries of protocol. "This is for her own good," one said. "You cannot understand the consequences of this bond." Jalen shook his head, determination burning in his chest. "I understand more than you think.
She chose me.
She trusts me, and I will protect her with everything I am. You can't take that away from either of us." Hours passed in tense debate. Jalen stood his ground, never releasing Lyra's shoulders. She pressed into him, tail curling around his waist, ears flicking nervously but unwavering. Her growls became softer, almost comforting, her way of showing that she was with him, that she would fight for him as fiercely as he fought for her. Finally, Jalen spoke again, voice steady, carrying the weight of human courage. "Look at her. See what we've built together. This bond, it's real. It's more than law, more than rules. It's loyalty, trust, and love. You cannot erase that. You cannot control it, and I won't let you try." The Council hesitated, unsure how to respond. They had never faced such determination, such courage, and such undeniable connection. Lyra moved slightly, nuzzling Jalen's neck, growling softly as if reinforcing his words. Her amber eyes locked onto the counselors, fierce and unwavering. For the first time, they understood. The bond was unique, unprecedented, but real. It could not be broken by protocol or fear. It existed because of choice, trust, and courage, qualities they had always respected in humans. The lead counselor sighed, a mix of frustration and reluctant admiration in his expression. "Very well," he said. "The bond is recognized under supervision. This is extraordinary, but it cannot be replicated or imposed. It is yours as long as it lasts." Jalen exhaled, relief flooding through him. Lyra pressed against him, tail wrapped tightly, ears flicking in a sign of calm and trust. They had won. Not through violence, not through fear, but through the courage to stand together and the loyalty to protect each other. For Jalen, it was a revelation. Humanity's strength was not just in skill, intelligence, or technology. It was in courage, in standing firm, in the willingness to risk everything for someone else. And in Lyra, he had found a partner who embodied those same qualities in a way he had never imagined. That night, they sat together under the same blanket, the Council's presence now only a formality. Lyra's body pressed against his, her soft growls and chirps echoing a promise that had survived threat, fear, and doubt. Jalen held her close, feeling the warmth of her fur, the steady rhythm of her heart, and the undeniable reality of their bond. No matter the rules, no matter the universe's doubts, they had chosen each other, and in that choice they discovered something greater than survival. They had found love, loyalty, and a strength that transcended worlds. Jalen whispered softly, brushing her fur from her face. "We're together, Lyra, for life." She responded with a low, comforting growl, pressing closer. And in that quiet moment, the storm of the outside world faded. They had fought for their bond, and nothing, no rule, no council, no danger, could take it away. The council had gone, their judgment recorded and final. But for Jalen and Lyra, life was just beginning. The small station on Zephyria 9 felt warmer now, not because of heaters or blankets, but because of the bond that pulsed between them, alive, unbreakable and utterly theirs. Each morning, sunlight poured through the tall windows, illuminating Lyra's silver fur. She moved gracefully around the station, ears twitching and tail curling with every step. Jalen watched her, heart swelling with a mix of awe and tenderness. She was extraordinary, fierce, loyal, and breathtakingly intelligent. But now she was his partner and he hers. They shared everything. Meals, chores, repairs, and long hours of quiet conversation. Words were not always needed. Gestures, glances, and touches said more than language ever could. When he worked on the communications array, she would perch nearby, observing, curious, and alert. Sometimes she would nudge him with her nose or wrap her tail around his arm, a reminder that he was not alone. Evenings were the most sacred. They would sit together under the tattered blanket that had brought them together on that stormy night. Lyra would curl into his side, head resting against his chest, and Jalen would run his fingers through her soft fur. The warmth they shared was more than physical. It was trust, companionship, and a bond stronger than fear or distance. Occasionally, other colonists would glance at them, whispers trailing behind. But Jalen ignored it. They had faced danger, prejudice, and fear together, and nothing could shake what they had built. Humanity had taught him courage, but Lyra had shown him something equally vital. Love that defied logic, rules, and expectation. One night, a storm rolled in again, cold and relentless. Lightning flashed across the sky and thunder shook the station. Lyra stirred beside him, ears flattening, tail twitching nervously. But this time she did not panic. She pressed against him, growling softly as if reminding him and herself that together they could face anything. Jalen smiled, brushing his hand over her head. "I've got you," he whispered, "always. Nothing will ever change that." Her response was a gentle nuzzle, her amber eyes glowing in the dim light. It was a promise, a declaration, a quiet confirmation of everything they had survived and everything they would face together. The universe could be vast, cold, and indifferent, but within that small station they had warmth, trust, and an unbreakable bond. Years passed. The colony grew, repairs and expansions were made, and life moved forward. But Jalen and Lyra's connection only deepened. They faced dangers, yes. Meteor showers, supply shortages, alien wildlife, but always side by side. Every trial strengthened them. Every challenge proved the truth of their bond. Love and loyalty were the greatest strengths any being could have. Sometimes, late at night, Jalen would think back to the first stormy night when he had offered a simple blanket to a shivering alien girl. That small act of kindness had changed everything. It had forged a bond no rules could sever, no council could deny, no danger could destroy. It had proven that humanity's greatest power was not in machines, weapons, or technology. It was in courage, compassion, and the capacity to love. Lyra would stir, shifting closer, her soft growls vibrating against him. He would whisper her name, brushing his hand across her fur, and feel the unspoken words between them. "We are together, always." And in that quiet corner of Zephyria 9, two beings from different worlds, one human, one alien, one fragile, one wild, proved that connection, courage, and love could overcome any obstacle. They had survived storms, battles, and prejudice. They had faced fear and uncertainty and chosen each other anyway, wrapped in their blanket, hearts beating in quiet synchrony. Jalen and Lyra slept together, knowing that whatever the universe threw at them next, they would face it as one. For in that bond, forged through kindness, courage, and trust, they had discovered the greatest truth of all. Love is stronger than fear. Humanity shines brightest when it protects, and some connections are meant to last a lifetime, even across worlds.